This lecture video may be considered a sequel to my previous presentation on a brief life history of Robert Frost and an analysis of the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Obviously, dealing with so vast a subject as the life of Robert Frost in so short an introduction is inevitably an exercise in brevity, and in so doing much has been omitted for which it is deeply regretted. To what has already been said in my previous lecture on Robert Frost, I would like to add some of the comments on America's preeminent poet Robert Frost. So immense was the impact of the poet on his readers that he was called by the Times of London in its obituary announcing his death in 1963, and I quote, "Undoubtedly the most widely known and loved literary figure in America," unquote. To which the paper added in a separate editorial tribute that his fame in England was such that in mourning him, I quote, "we are also regretting a loss that feels to have happened at home." The then President of United States said of him that he had left, and I quote, "a vacancy in the American spirit. His death impoverishes us all. But he has bequeathed his nation a body of imperishable verse from which Americans will forever gain joy and understanding," unquote. Now, before I begin discussing the poem, I would like to ask a couple of questions. No, not the examination questions. Try to recall some of the situations when you had to make a choice. While choosing a subject, a college, a stream, a house. Was it difficult? Was it easy? These questions that deal with the psychological complexity must be kept in mind while understanding the poem. Now, the poem, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. The poem, The Road Not Taken, was published in the Atlantic Monthly, an American journal, in August 1915, and later used as the opening poem of his collection, Mountain Interval, published in 1916. Frost originally titled the poem Two Roads. To some, the poem celebrates individualism, while others see multiple layers of meaning in it. Nevertheless, Frost himself explained that the poem was intended as a joke that emerged from his friend Edward Thomas's tendency to complain that whatever path they took, they should have taken a different one. The poem begins with a dilemma, and the nostalgic tone is evident in the title The Road Not Taken. Yellow wood in the first line is an indication of the setting of the poem, and here I would like to draw your attention to my previous lecture on stopping by woods on a snowy evening. If you remember, I talked about Frost's attention to natural details and his dwelling on the relationship between humans and nature. In his description of the wood in the first stanza of this poem, Frost uses one detail, the yellow leaves, and makes it emblematic of the entire forest. The yellow leaves suggest autumn, when most trees, particularly alder and birch, start yellowing and become lifeless. The poet is faced with a dilemma when he reaches a fork in the road. He feels sorry that he could not take both the roads at the same time. This setting encourages the speaker towards introspection. He stands there for a long time, determining which road to continue the journey. He notices that one of the roads bends and disappears in the undergrowth. The other road, in the second stanza, appears to the poet as just as fair, less travelled, and although it does initially appear slightly grassier, both are almost practically identical and equally trodden, thus erasing the distinction. Finally, the poet chooses the road less travelled, hoping that he may be able to visit this place again and travel the other road, yet realizing that such an opportunity is unlikely. In the last stanza, the poet imagines himself in the future, telling the story of his life and claiming that his decision to take the road less travelled has made all the difference. The two concluding lines are not only the poem's best known lines, but the ones that capture what most readers take to be its central image. A lonely path that we take at great risk, possibly for great reward. Irony is also visible in the contrast of the title with its penultimate lines. The poem relies on a metaphor in which the journey through life is considered to a journey on road, while the fork on the road metaphorically represents the choices we make to determine the course of our lives. This choice will have a significant influence on the future. Thus, the expression of uncertainty and perplexity and perplexing situation about choices and our natural tendency to surmise about consequences we may have to face marks the central point in the poem. The poem consists of 4 stanzas of 5 lines each. The rhyme scheme of the poem is A-B-A-A-B. The poem employs iambic tetrameter. The images used help the readers actually perceive things in detail. The visual imagery used are that of yellow leaves, wood, road, and other such images are full in the poem. Simile is evident in the second stanza first line as just as fair. Example of assonance can be seen in the line, though as for that the passing there. Thus, using this poem as a metaphor, one can get a better understanding of the problem that the speaker is faced with. In doing so, the poem becomes one of the masterpieces of Frost's dealing with the psychological complexities of man's mind. Thank you.